Have you ever held on to something long after it stopped holding you? A person? A memory? A story you kept rewriting, hoping one day it would end differently? Letting go is one of the hardest things a sensitive soul can do, especially when your heart has learned to love deeply. But what if the very act of holding on is what's been quietly breaking you? This is not a story about loss. It's a story about healing through silence and how the act of letting go can return you to yourself. The weight you carry in silence. There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that lives in women who love too deeply. They smile in rooms where their souls are tired. They say, "I'm fine," while their chest carries an invisible storm. They hold the world together, even when it's their own world that's falling apart. You've probably felt that kind of tired before, the kind that doesn't go away after sleep, because it isn't in your body, it's in your mind. You keep replaying old conversations, hoping the past will finally say what you needed to hear. You keep waiting for closure from someone who has already moved on, maybe not physically, but emotionally. And in that waiting, your energy leaks, drop by drop, until all that's left is a version of you that's always trying to understand what went wrong. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Maybe this is what happens when we can't let go. We call it fate, but really, it's our unhealed attachment, the invisible string that ties us to stories that are no longer alive. Letting go isn't about forgetting someone or erasing memories. It's about freeing your energy from the need to understand everything. Because some chapters aren't meant to be understood. They're meant to be closed.
The feminine mind and the illusion of control. The feminine mind has a beautiful but dangerous gift. It remembers everything, every tone, every silence, every half-truth. It reads emotions that were never spoken. It notices when love starts fading before love ever admits it. That deep sensitivity is power, but it's also the source of pain when misused. Because when you remember everything, you start believing you can fix everything. You replay the story thinking, "If I had said this instead, if I had loved harder, if I had been more patient." And without noticing, your memory becomes your prison. You start thinking healing means understanding why they left, why it ended, why it changed. But sometimes understanding is not healing. Sometimes understanding is the delay of healing. Carl Jung believed that the psyche seeks balance. It craves wholeness, not explanations. That means when something or someone leaves your life, it's often not punishment, it's psychic equilibrium restoring itself. The problem is, we've been conditioned, especially as women, to believe that love means holding on, holding families together, relationships together, even people who've already let go of us. But true feminine power begins not when you keep holding, but when you release with grace. Letting go doesn't mean indifference. It means no longer bleeding for what doesn't feed you. You can love someone and still choose distance. You can forgive someone and still choose silence. You can miss someone and still not want them back. That's what maturity looks like, and that's what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, authentic, and inwardly sovereign. Most people misunderstand feminine strength. They think it's loud, expressive, overflowing. But the truest form of feminine power is contained. It's the calm presence of a woman who no longer explains her silence. When you stop chasing closure, you begin to heal. Because healing isn't about them, it's about where your energy returns. The energy of holding on. Every attachment carries energy, and when that energy isn't mutual, it becomes a drain. Think about how many times you've said, "I'm okay," while your body screamed otherwise. Think about how much energy it takes to hold the mask, to keep smiling when all you wanted was to disappear. That energy doesn't vanish. It gets stored inside you as tension, overthinking, sleepless nights. Jung compared the psyche to an electrical system. Every thought, emotion, or memory carries a charge. If you keep feeding old circuits, past arguments, regrets, what-ifs, you short-circuit your present. That's why you feel numb. That's why your creativity dies when you can't stop thinking about them. You're not broken. You're disconnected from your own current. Letting go isn't weakness. It's energetic intelligence. It's the moment you decide, I will no longer allow the past to rent space in my nervous system. Sometimes closure doesn't come from a conversation. It comes from exhaustion. When you finally get tired of explaining pain that no longer deserves a voice. And when that day comes, silence doesn't feel like loneliness anymore. It feels like home. The power of emotional detachment. There's a sacred kind of peace that comes the moment you stop reacting. Not because you stopped caring, but because you've learned that not every emotion deserves an answer. People will call you distant when you no longer bleed for their comfort. They'll say you've changed when you stop explaining your boundaries. But what they're really saying is, you're no longer easy to control. Carl Jung called this transition the movement from persona to self, the shedding of the mask that exists to please. When you detach, the persona cracks. The world you built around approval begins to fall apart, and the real you quietly steps forward. Detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. It's the pause between the stimulus and your reaction, the exact space where your power lives. You begin to realize that not everything that demands your attention deserves it, that not every cry for help is yours to answer, and not every emotional storm is meant to be survived. Some are meant to be observed from the shore. At first, detachment feels like death. Your nervous system, trained for chaos, panics when peace arrives. It whispers, "This silence feels wrong. Do something. Reach out. Fix it." But silence isn't wrong. It's just unfamiliar. With time, that silence becomes a mirror. You start seeing who you are without the noise. The woman beneath the expectations. The woman who doesn't need to prove her worth by being useful. And that's where the transformation begins. Because emotional detachment is not the end of feeling. It's the beginning of feeling selectively. You start choosing which emotions deserve your stage and which belong to someone else's drama. When you finally step back from the chaos, you'll notice something powerful. Many of the people you thought you needed were simply reflections of your own unhealed parts. They mirrored the places in you that still believed love must be earned through sacrifice. But when you detach, those mirrors break. And behind the shards, You find your face, untouched, unperformed, real.
The art of silent healing. The world tells you healing means movement, doing, journaling, talking, explaining. But the deepest healing happens in stillness. In the quiet moments when you finally stop running after closure and simply let your heart breathe. Jung said, "The soul is a self-regulating system that seeks balance just as the body does." When you fall silent, that system begins to repair itself. Your mind stops rehearsing pain. Your body starts trusting calm again. Slowly, the nervous system learns a new rhythm. Peace as the default, not chaos. Silence is not emptiness, it's integration. Every time you sit quietly and let the ache move through you without reaction, something reorganizes. The memory stays, but the charge dissolves. You can look at the past without being pulled back into it. That's when you notice how your senses sharpen. Colors feel deeper. Music touches differently. You start to feel alive, not because someone returned, but because you did. Silent healing doesn't announce itself. It's the day you stop checking their profile, the night you sleep without replaying the argument, the morning you realize you haven't thought about them for hours, and it feels peaceful. But silence also tests you. It removes distractions and forces you to hear your own thoughts, the raw, unfiltered truth. You meet every version of yourself you avoided through noise. The lonely one, angry one, the hopeful one. You learn to sit with her, not fix her, not shame her, just listen. And through that listening, you reclaim your inner authority. Because the feminine mind heals through witnessing. It doesn't need to conquer emotion. It needs to be fully present with it until it transforms. Jung described individuation as a circle, the journey of returning to wholeness. In that circle, silence is the midpoint, the womb of rebirth. It's where the old self dissolves so the new one can form.
Rebirth, the woman who let go. After every storm, there's a strange calm. That's what letting go feels like, a dawn after a long night. You start noticing the small things again, the way sunlight hits the floor, the taste of coffee, the rhythm of your own breathing. They were always there, you just couldn't feel them while holding what was gone. Letting go doesn't erase love, it purifies it. It turns attachment into gratitude, pain into wisdom, and loss into space for something new. And here's the secret Jung hinted at. Every ending in the outer world mirrors a beginning in the inner one. When you lose someone or something, a part of you that relied on them dies too. But underneath that death is life reorganizing itself. You start feeling your own energy coming back. Ideas flow again. You feel creative, grounded, soft. Not because you found someone new, but because you remembered yourself. This is what true feminine power looks like. It's quiet, steady, magnetic. It doesn't chase, it attracts. It doesn't beg, it becomes. People will notice the shift. They'll ask, "What happened to you?" And you'll smile, not out of pride, but peace. Because how do you explain that you stopped fighting the current and started flowing with it? How do you explain that your silence healed wounds words never could? You don't. You simply live differently. You love differently. You exist from a place where peace is no longer negotiable. So ask yourself, what are you still holding that no longer holds you? Whose energy still lives rent-free in your mind? And who could you become if you finally let it all go? Letting go is not losing. It's opening your hands to receive what's meant for you. If this message touched you, write in the comments, "I release to heal."
Let the world see how many women are ready to reclaim their energy, not through noise, but through sacred silence. And remember, you are not what you've lost. You are what you've survived. And your silence, that calm, grounded, radiant silence, is proof that you're finally free.